Hello, MCU fans! Today is going to be the final video in my series of closing out the year 2024 in the MCU. Now, this series so far has included 6 different videos, so make sure to check those out if you haven't seen them. But for this video, I'm going to take a 40,000-foot view of the entire MCU as we look at the state of the MCU. So in other words, how is Uncle Feige feeling as we close out this year? So, lots to discuss. Let's dive right in and see what we can find out. Don't forget, we have a December contest running all month long. Be a subscriber, leave a comment, and you could win a book or a steelbook. Best of luck. And we have a membership option with lots of cool perks, so you might check it out in case you're interested. Okay, so I'm going to start with a perspective check looking back at all of the different phases and their Rotten Tomatoes scores. And I realize Rotten Tomatoes is not a perfect measuring device, but it's the only thing that lets us look at shows and movies and how the critics and general audience felt. So notice, with Phase 1, pretty much the critics and the general audience were on the same page, 80% and 79%. So now we go to Phase 2. Things went up a little bit. Now we're at 81% and 84%. But once again, critics and general audience pretty much on the same page. Phase 3 is where things get a little more interesting. Notice critics very happy, 89%. General audience around 83%. So why the difference? Well, that would be 2 different movies. Captain Marvel and Black Panther. In both cases, the critics were a lot happier than were the general audience. So I would have to agree more with the critics on Captain Marvel. I don't think it deserves a 45. And obviously Black Panther, if you saw my ranking video, I put that way near the top. I like the 96. I don't understand the 79. Well, maybe I do. We won't go into that, but there's a common thread on why both of those might have gotten such a low score. Mind you, it's fine if you don't like the movies, but 45% for Captain Marvel? Yeesh. All right, so now we look at Phase 4, movies. So in this case, the critics were not as happy as the general audience. Notice the 76 versus 88. So what happened here? Well, that's because the critics just hammered Eternals. So I got to go with the general audience on this. I do not think Eternals deserves a 47. It's not my favorite movie, but 47? Come on. Then also Love and Thunder. I mean, I ranked Love and Thunder very low, but I don't know if I'd even go 63. That's pretty low. And then here we have another instance where the critics were a lot harsher on 2 movies, Wakanda Forever and Black Widow, than the general audience. Okay, now let's look at the shows. This is really interesting. So notice the movies, 76 and 88. But if we go to the shows, the Disney Plus shows, now the critics are really happy and the general audience is less happy. Okay, so what happened here? Well, the general audience hammered She-Hulk. And again, it's okay if you don't like She-Hulk. Several people have it low on their list, but 32%, man, that's harsh. On the other hand, Miss Marvel, I kind of got to agree with the general audience on that. I mean, it's a good show, but 98? I think the critics gave that much too high of a ranking. All right, so now let's look at Phase 5. So Phase 5, right now, both the critics and the general audience seem to agree it is the worst phase so far. That is the lowest score. So what's going on here? Well, we have several entries that just got hammered, right? I mean, the Marvels, I think the critics probably were a little low on that, but still, that was not as successful. I mean, look at Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. The critics just hammered that one. Secret Invasion, the general audience and critics hammered it. And then Echo, again, those aren't terrible scores, but they're not good. I mean, 70 and 60 is not good enough. So you can see those obviously hurt the way people view Phase 5. And then this is interesting to me. I don't know what it is that the general audience didn't like about What If Season 2. I mean, maybe it doesn't deserve a 90, but I didn't think a 65. I thought it was really good. And then Deadpool and Wolverine, on the other hand, I'm one of those fans that loved it. So I would have put the 94 versus critics who just weren't as happy. But anyway, the bottom line is when you look at Phase 5 as a whole, it is not the best phase by any means. In fact, let's look at the overall scores. So this is the critic and the general audience scores for each phase. In fact, for me, probably I would be more with the critics. I put Phase 3 as my favorite, then Phase 4, then 2, then 1, and then finally 5. And then on the other hand, the general audience pretty much just didn't like Phase 1 and Phase 5, and everything else is somewhere in the middle. But here's something interesting. So now Marvel has officially said all 13 seasons of the Netflix shows are Sacred Timeline canon. I don't know why they have not said Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Agent Carter, Cloak and Dagger, some of the other shows. Those are still not considered part of the Sacred Timeline. Maybe they're branches, I don't know. But these officially are. So now I want to layer in these scores, and I think you're going to see something really interesting. So let's focus on the two phases where these shows impact, Phase 2 and Phase 3. Phase 2, for the record, had Daredevil Season 1 and 2 and Jessica Jones Season 1. All of them really good seasons. Okay, so let's see what happens. Ooh, interesting, right? So let's look at the critic in particular. So the critic shifted from loving Phase 3 and, liking Phase 2 to flipping it, right? So suddenly 85 and 81. And then let's look at the general audience. They went from 84, 83 to 86, 78. Ouch. So why did this happen? Well, because honestly, other than Daredevil Season 3, most of the later seasons of the Netflix shows, went down in quality. They weren't terrible. They were all good, but they just went down. So isn't it interesting that when you throw in the Netflix shows, now Phase 2 is the favorite phase of both the critics and the general audience? Isn't that wild? And I'm going to bet that even if we threw in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Cloak and Dagger, Agent Carter, etc., I'm going to bet the same thing would happen because, in general, quality went down as the seasons continued on. Very, very interesting. All right, so one last thing I want to look at for perspective is year by year, how did both the critics and the general audience rank the movies? So for critics, it was 2012 and 2014. Isn't that interesting? Those were the two best years for the movies, according to critics. How about the general audience? Well, general audience likes 2024 and 2014. Although in fairness, 2024 only had one movie, which was really good, Deadpool and Wolverine. But still, that's very interesting. So now let's layer in the Disney Plus shows and see what happened. And remember, in general, critics really liked the shows, general audience, not so much. So let's first look at the critic score and watch how, across the board, it went up. Look at that. That's crazy, right? And then look at the general audience. Across the board, it went down. Wild. And so now, both the critics and the general audience agree that the best 2 years were 2012 and 2014. Did anybody see that coming? I mean, that is wild. That is wild. All right, so now let's layer in the Netflix shows. So, no surprise, 2015 goes up, and everything else basically goes down a little bit or a lot. I mean, look at 2017 in particular. Oof. Wow, that took a hit. Okay, so now we have to look at the question of what on earth happened in 2022 and 2023 that caused this dip in the scores. And notice 2024 has gone back up a bit. Is that a blip, or is that something we can count on as we end out 2024 and head into 2025? All right, so what exactly happened to cause that drop in quality in 2022 and 2023? Well, let's start with the fact that Disney fired James Gunn. I want to stress, Feige did not fire him. In fact, Feige lobbied to have him return. But that certainly messed things up because Gunn has talked about the fact he had lots of ideas for where to take the Guardians and many different spin-offs, which we'll probably never see. Obviously, COVID occurred. That messed everybody up. We had the tragic death of Chadwick Boseman, R.I.P., which is bigger than just losing one, character, Black Panther. He was going to be one of the pillars of the MCU going forward. So that was a huge hit to Marvel. Speaking of huge hits, the whole Jonathan Majors situation. I mean, whether or not you think he should have been fired, it doesn't really matter. It's clear that the legal issues caused Marvel all kinds of problems. Plus, Kang dying in Quantumania made a lot of people lose faith in just how good of a character he really was. I think that character would have come back as the Beyonder, but it doesn't matter. A lot of people were like, wait, they literally just killed one of the main villains. This guy can't be that tough, right? So it made Marvel really have to rethink the whole Kang strategy. Then we have Chapek. Oh, my word. Chapek, the former CEO, pushing every division, but particularly Marvel, to pump out quantity over quality. Then we also had the Disney purchase of 20th Century Fox, which is good news. It meant Feige suddenly had access to Fantastic Four, X-Men, etc. But it did cause him to have to totally change course and figure out, how do I integrate all these characters in? We as fans wanted it to happen immediately, but of course it doesn't work that way. It takes sometimes years to suddenly bring in all these characters. And then lastly, the writer's strike. Obviously, that caused all kinds of problems in 2023. So I think the biggest thing I want to point out here is nothing on this list is Kevin Feige's fault. Nothing. All of these things were external factors happening to either his actors, his directors, the characters he had access to, etc. So I'm not trying to give him a pass. He's still responsible for the fact that ultimately 2022 and 2023 were not good years in the MCU. But if you objectively look at all this, you can understand why there was a drop in quality. So, hopefully, since these things are now in the past and Feige has had a chance to recover from them, we're going to hopefully see the quality continue to rise. All right, so now let's look at some of the other things that have hurt the MCU's quality during the multiverse saga. A big one is that the multiverse stories have just seemed disconnected when compared to like Phase 2 and Phase 3. So notice with Phase 2 and Phase 3, we had several kind of coming together points. Avengers Age of Ultron, Civil War, Infinity War, and Endgame. So basically the characters would go off on their own and then would come together again. But if you look at Phase 4, it's pretty disconnected, right? It's kind of all over the place. And it's continued that way in Phase 5. But here's the good news. I really think 2025 is going to be a great year because Captain America Brave New World and Thunderbolts are kind of those bringing everything together points, both from a story standpoint, but also several of the characters. So I think those are very important and a perfect way to close out Phase 5. We really, really needed these type of movies on the horizon, and thank goodness we're going to see them soon. All right. Also, I think 2025 is going to be exciting because, number one, we have 9 entries. Wow, we'll talk about that in just a minute. But they're a mix of the multiverse and grounded. So notice we have multiversal stories, Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, Fantastic Four, and zombies. We have grounded stories, Captain America 4, Daredevil Born Again, Thunderbolts, Ironheart, and Wonder Man. And we even have a cool history story thrown in because Eyes of Wakanda, of course, is going to let us learn more about the history of Vibranium and Wakanda. So, yeah, that's great, right? But I'm sure a lot of people are looking at this going, 9 entries, what happened to cutting back? Well, keep in mind, several of these have been made for a while, and now they're finally being able to be released because the writer strike delayed things and other things delayed them. But honestly, I don't care that there's 9 entries as long as the quality is good. The issue has always been the quantity dropped the quality. So, will we get good quality with these 9 entries? Well, let me do something interesting. Let me ask you a question, and then I'll show you the answer. What year in the MCU had the most entries ever? I mean, 9, that's a lot, right? But what year had the most ever? Think about it for a second, and here's the answer. 2018. 2018 had 10 entries. So you had Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Season 5 wrapping up, back half of the season, Black Panther, Jessica Jones Season 2, Infinity War, Cloak and Dagger Season 2, Luke Cage Season 2, Ant-Man and the Wasp, Iron Fist Season 2, Daredevil Season 3, and Runaways Season 2, which dropped in December, but dropped every single episode. 10 entries. So again, the issue is not, is there too much? It's, is it good quality? Because people weren't going, oh, I can't handle it. This is too much to watch. It's overload. No, they just watched the things they wanted to watch, and they skipped the things they didn't want to watch. And by the way, this is just the MCU. Let's talk about Marvel properties in general in 2018. So we also had Legion Season 2, Deadpool 2, The Gifted Season 2, Once Upon a Deadpool, Venom, Into the Spider-Verse, and just for good measure, we'll throw in Team Daryl, since that's technically not MCU canon. So yeah, that was actually 17 Marvel properties in 2018. And again, I don't remember hearing anybody complaining about this is too much content. We were eating good in 2018. And again, you just watched the things you wanted to watch. You know, if The Gifted wasn't your thing, you just didn't watch it. So, bottom line is, I'm not too worried about a year with 9 entries because, we enjoyed a year that had 17. Okay, another big issue is there are still a lot of open questions. You might remember in my video on that, I showed 87 open questions. But here's the good news. When we looked at where the answers are projected to come, nearly half of them will come in 2025. Nearly half. That is fantastic. It's about time we start knocking these questions off the list. It's okay to have open questions, but we've got some dating all the way back to Phase 1 that are finally going to get addressed in 2025. That is awesome. Another concern for Marvel is they have a lot of heroes to juggle. In my State of Heroism, I talked about every single hero, and there are a ton. But I think Marvel is addressing that by organizing these characters in teams. We may have potentially 9 teams in existence by the time we reach Secret Wars, and that's fantastic. I'm not saying all of these are going to appear in the movie, but just the fact that the characters are being grouped together makes it easier to manage them, makes it easier to conceive of what they're all doing, because Marvel has a deep bench, so this is a very smart move on their part. I think it's going to work really well as we head towards Secret Wars. And then I know I bring this up a lot, but it's critically important as we head towards the most important multiversal movie, Secret Wars, that we understand how the multiverse works. So you know my theory, right, is that there are multiple Big Bangs and separate universes, and that over on the far right, the MCU is basically Loki's tree. So the tree is 616 and all of the what-if branches. But you know what? It doesn't matter what I think. What matters is that Marvel makes it clear so we're all on the same page. And I think there's two big reasons we're going to get some major clarity. Number one is Monica showed up somewhere. Now, I think it was 10005, but it doesn't matter. We're going to find that out, I suspect, in 2025. And then also, the Fantastic Four movie is going to come out. That's going to be in a totally separate universe for the entire movie, basically. And I think Reed Richards, is going to explain to us how the multiverse is set up. So, fingers crossed, we're going to head into Secret Wars, even Doomsday maybe, with a very good understanding of how this all fits together, and everybody will be on the same page. That will be critically important to Marvel's success. So overall, what do I think is the state of the MCU as 2024 closes out? Well, the reason I chose this particular image is I do think this was Kevin Feige's face as 2023 closed out, where he was like, oh man, this has not been going well. How do we get out of the funk that we've been in? Well, I think 2024 really delivered. We got 3 excellent entries, 1 animated, 1 movie, and 1 show. And honestly, Agatha all along, who thought that was going to be that good, right? And it was fantastic. So Marvel has shown that when they take the time to put the quality in their entries, they're going to succeed. So I think they have proven they know what they need to do, and that is very good news as we head into 2025. So I think the state of the MCU is excitement. Yes, I think Feige's face has changed from the frown to this face. I think he's very excited as we head into 2025, and I think we all, as fans, should be excited. So let me know what you think the state of the MCU is. But for me, I believe it is excitement. And speaking of, now we await the next exciting entries in Phase 5, starting with What If Season 3 coming out in just a few short days. Cannot wait. I will break it down, probably 1 video covering everything since it runs over Christmas, but I think it's going to be fantastic. And then we head into 2025 and all that it has in store for us. So don't forget, December contest, be a subscriber, leave a comment, win a book or a steelbook, and we have that membership option in case you're interested in that. And then one last plug for the What If Pitch Contest on the Discord. Rules are really simple. The TLDR is join the Discord and share your idea for an MCU, Star Wars, or DC What If pitch. So if you'd like to be part of this contest, I will leave a pinned comment so you can join the Discord, 1,900 members across the globe, conversations 24/7, and we would like for you to be part of it. Also, if you don't mind, like this video, subscribe if you haven't already. You can check out more content, and we'll all continue to enjoy the ever-growing, the ever-changing Marvel Cinematic Universe.